going to hit mute real quick because it looks like we're about to jump into maybe some new stuff. Let's just see.
What?
Alrighty, ladies and gentlemen over on YouTube, welcome back. To the people on Twitch, sit tight, because we're getting into some new stuff. Let's see what this is.
A way to start, and that's not the only thing from the 41st millennium we've got to show you. So don't go anywhere, 40k fans, there's plenty more where that came from. Next up, we're travelling deep within the mortal realms.
Ooh. Hold on, chat. Whoa, Bone Boys. Ooh. Sorry, chat. Let's see what this is. Warcry. Age of Sigmar. A new Warcry box set. We've got Bone Boys. Alright, out in the fighting some tree people. The Bitter Twisted. Alright. That guy's got... What are those? Bees? He's full of bees, chat. Bees. Can't steal his honey. Skeleton, something of hordes. Alright, so you got some undead looking guys here. You ready? I don't particularly care for these style of skeletons. Or the tree people. They're not my cup of tea. You got half man, half bone horse. This is the Gnarlwood Quakes. Briar and Bone. Let's see what they
So there we go,
say.
Warcry, Briar and Bone is on the way real soon. You can almost smell it on the air. My name's Nick, and joining me is John from the Warhammer Studio.
Oh.
John, Warcry, Briar and Bone. Tell me all about it. What we got?
Okay, so very, very exciting box set. We've got brand new
John.
bespoke warbands, both the Ossiarch Reapers and the Sylvaneth. In addition to which, we've got the Ravening Narwhal, which is a giant, horrible creature.
I love it.
It's really, really cool.
pretty cool.
It's a really, really nasty, horrible piece of terrain, which we'll get to in a little bit. So the Tyrannic cohort are a bit of an oddball one for the Ossiarch Bone Reapers because they're effectively exiled constructs. So the thing is with the Ossiarch Bone Reapers is very, very little goes to waste. Okay, everything is built for a purpose, and sometimes the purpose is punishment. Okay, so each of the creatures in the Tyrannic...
If they're constructs, do they have their own free will? And if they don't, how are they exiled?
cohort, in addition to the Centaurs in charge, are creatures who are being punished by the Ossiarch Bone Reapers, some kind of perceived failure. So, you know, we all know that the Ossiarch Bone Reapers, never flee, never retreat, win all the battles all the time. Well, that's just patently not true.
I don't know anything about these guys.
Every now and again, something doesn't go quite
Definitely
right.
in my case, yeah.
And either it's somebody's fault, at which point you're to blame, or, it's your fault, so you're to blame. So what you end up with is a group of very fast, very mobile outriders. And part of the exile is they don't want you around anymore. Okay, so these creatures get sent out into the very, very outer wilds of the various different mortal realms. And in this instance, this particular warband has ended up in the Gnarlwood, because no one really wants to go in there. And the Ossiarch Bone Reapers are already starting to twitch a little bit.
So let's take a closer look at this. We've got some bone doggos. Got this dude with a really long whip. Got the bee man there. Can't really tell what that is. Some flying creature. And then there's the half man, half dead horse thing. And then you've got that guy back there. And then you've got a sarlacc stuck in a tree or something. And then you've got whatever that is back there. I'm sure these will do something. Again, this isn't my cup of tea. But let's just play this video for the people that might be interested in it.
Because of the vast amounts of beast bone that they'll be made from. And these are no exception. So they're crazed, ferocious, feral, but they've also got a certain element of clinical, death-like emotionless about them as well. So they're a warband of paradoxes. It's very, very cool.
And the models are fantastic.
The models are very, very cool. Have you noticed the single eye?
Oh yeah, that's great.
Yeah. So that's effectively the hook there is got the eyes of Catacross. So not Catacross himself specifically looking through them, but their masters can just see through their eyes because they're effectively outriders. So so the Centroid is in charge of all this, and it's his job to kind of keep everything in line and make sure and whip things into the right place. And
that's kind of neat that he's got pretty much, they've got webcams in their head. Magical webcams of doom.
Get things going where they're supposed to be. And The warband itself has a unique mechanic which doesn't exist in other warbands across Warcry yet, which is quite cool. So we're trying to investigate different ways of applying resources that everyone's familiar with in very different ways. So what they get to do is they get to spend wild dice when they're using their abilities in order to empower them. So you get a short-term reward, and the opportunity cost there is that later on you're not going to have that wild dice to get initiative or boost
no
your
idea
triple
what
into a
he's
quad or
talking
whatever it
about.
might be. That's very much their shtick, as it were. They're quite powerful individually. Certainly the two bodyguards and the Centroid are very strong. They're pretty deep.
Stop and take a quick look at these models real quick in case anybody's interested. So I thought they were only supposed to have one eye, but here they've got two, unless that eye is in the middle there. Because those are eyes and that's an eye, so they actually have three eyes. So why wouldn't it just be? It would have been better if they just had the Cyclops eye in the middle and not these things there, because it doesn't make any sense. Doesn't make any sense. But all right. I mean, they're all right looking. I mean, they're okay looking, but they're still not my cup of tea. I don't like the weird chitinous, weird, bony. They're not traditional skeletons that I like. They just seem, I don't know, not my cup of tea. They're kind of bulky and weird to me.
Decent fighters overall. The other fighters in the warband, the Bone Beasts and the Harpies, they're not quite so powerful, but obviously they make up for that by just sheer mobility and being able to support your other fighters in their attacks.
Now we've got a Sylvaneth warband in the box as well, the Twist Wheels.
Yeah, absolutely.
Tell me
Very
about
exciting.
those.
Okay, so the Twist Wheels are really, really cool. So their
see what these guys
background
do.
is that each and every one of them is infected. Okay,
Uh-oh.
they are not regular Sylvaneth at all. They've got a horrible infection which is corrupting them from the inside out. And one of the reasons they're called the Twist Wheel is because the Alariel Song of Life, they hear it in a very, very different way. It's all corrupt to them. The strains are all very different, so they don't quite interact with them the same way. And what they're doing is they're trying to get back to Alariel in order to be cured. So the Swarm Sage.
So just in case you're curious, chat, the video actually that was the picture completely in frame, and they did cut off the head. It wasn't on my end that the head of that model was cut off. They were showing. So
In particular, has dedicated themselves to trying to cure the Twist Wheel of their corruption and obviously expose themselves to it as well. And the danger is there that you get cut off from the Song of Life completely and you end up with this horrible warped, twisted creature. And no one really knows what happens there.
sure
But
they do.
what the Swarm Sage is effectively doing is easing out the corruption, because the corruption's like, you can see it on the models themselves, and the Swarm Sage uses its little crazy swarm stuff to just chew off the corruption and literally tear it out of their flesh. And it hurts, it's rubbish. But there's power in that, because once the corruption's torn out of you, you become more energized and you're able to hear that Song of Life a little bit better. The warband itself functions around the leader, dealing damage to your fighters in order to boost them up.
Oh, great.
And they can heal themselves as well, because naturally, healing is a huge part of the Sylvaneth fiction. But the actual playstyle of the warband is, you want to go hit things, because that's part of Warcry, go stab things, profit. But at the same time,
So I would have made that a little bit different. If these guys are corrupted and they're cutting parts and having bugs eat parts of them out of them, I'd make it so they can't heal. Instead, they do damage to themselves, but they increase damage afterwards. So it's like they take damage, but they deal more damage back.
you need to manage your fighters who are quite fragile very, very carefully, otherwise they'll fall over dead by the time you boosted them up.
Is it more difficult than it sounds, or is it about as difficult as it sounds?
It's not terribly difficult,
Okay.
because the damage that she deals to your fighters is locked behind abilities. So you need to have the abilities in order to be able to do it.
Okay.
So most of the time you're like, I've got my status, I've got my fighting stats, just like a regular game of Warcry. And where I go from there is I've got to decide who gets damaged when by the abilities I've got, and then obviously you can heal them up as well. Okay, and then the quad is pretty beefy as well. It can do a lot of damage. I think probably one of the most interesting things for this warband are the variety of different fighters. So you've got some corrupted dryads in there, which are regular dryads, but again, they've got the horrible corruption. It's actually a lot stronger and a lot tougher than a regular dryad. And you've also got some tree revenants in there as well, with a variety of weapons you've not seen before. So there's a tree revenant there with quite a large bow, and they've got a very interesting profile. I'd be very excited to see what people do with that, because it's damage done in a very, very different way. A range damage, I should say, done in a very different way that we normally do it in Warcry. And then you've got some fighters who are actually quite tough for Sylvaneth fighters. There's some toughness 5 fighters in there with shields, which is quite good, and again, the spear gives you extra bit of reach. And then, of course, there's the corrupted Spite Revenant with the Briar lash hand, which is particularly vicious if you get them in the right place at the right time.
Now, John, this box also comes with what must be my favourite terrain piece for Warcry for a long time, the Ravening Gnarlmaw. Tell me all about it.
Well, you've chosen a good one to be your favourite. It's one of the more creepy pieces I've seen so far. So the Ravening Gnarlmaw is a terrifying...
I think that's the big thing that I said was the Rancor in the tree stump.
Piece of kit. So it's like any other Gnarloak. It's a giant predatory flesh tree that burrows into you, drinks your blood, and then hangs you from its branches to just slowly drain the life out of you.
Man, it's an awful place.
It's horrific. Now, these things are terrifying, and the Gnarlwood is full of them. And of course, the Gnarlwood is also full of just people who live there or around it. And every now and again, they get it into their heads that maybe they can kind of half tame one of these things. That's impossible. It's a laughable concept. Taming anything in Gur is generally a very bad idea. So what they do is they kind of tie its roots down a bit to make sure it doesn't move off too much or eat them in their sleep, okay? And then they make like a little sacrificial altar out of it. And when a Gnarloak doesn't really need to go anywhere to feed, it kind of turns into one of these things. It's one of the many different creatures this thing can spawn out of, because obviously the magic in the realm can twist things in all kinds of horrible manners. So effectively what people will do is they'll go, okay, as long as we feed you, could you just scare off all the other Gnarlokes and maybe eat whatever isn't us? Now the Gnarloak has absolutely no concept of like actually what's going on really, it just gets fed every day, so it sits still, right? But yeah, people will drag it up onto that bamboo platform, chuck people into the maw, kick people, and then you can do that during the game as well, which is obviously tons of fun. You know, you got.
I would like to see that mechanic. That looks like a fun mechanic to happen, but I don't know how actually useful that model is going to be.
Be really careful if you're standing up. But you know, it provides a bit of interesting. It provides players an interesting question when they're playing the game. That okay, so it's a platform, it's high up, it's a vantage point, it's quite a useful place to be. And if there's an objective up there, there's a treasure token or something, you really want to go up there, you got to be quite careful. You don't just move up there, pick up the treasure, and then end your turn, because otherwise, you know, in comes the clothesline and over you go and you're dead.
John, thank you so much for talking to us about Warcry, Briar, and Bone. Thank you guys too, but stay around. There's more on the way.
Alrighty, chat. I'm going to end that YouTube VOD there, and I will see the people on YouTube later. Bye-bye.